According to ancient texts, the deity in the sanctum of the Indian temple is depicted closest to its all-pervasive nature. It is a manifestation of the ultimate truth. There also developed a great tradition of Utsava Murtis, or festival images. The deity, in many manifestations of human form, comes out to the streets of the town. Sometimes he performs a journey to a place of pilgrimage. He may be taken for a ritual bath, or even to the seashore to enjoy the breeze. As presented in the ritual texts, the Utsavas are of two kinds. These take place as a regular part of worship, in which the deity may make a circumambulatory tour of the temple, and those which occur once in a week, month, and year. The most important are the grand celebrations called Maha Utsavas, which are annual celebrations. In all these Utsavas, the deity leaves the sanctum and becomes approachable to all. The abstract, all-encompassing reality is given a form which we can relate to. A human form with emotions we can understand, even as a family man with a wife and child. It is the human form, luminous with the beauty of divinity. By about the 8th century, the Utsava Murtis in the temples of Tamil Nadu began to be made in bronze. This tradition of bronzes, which reached its height in the rule of the Cholas, resulted in some of the finest works of Indian art.
A very different tradition of modeling was followed here in India, and particularly in the South Indian bronzes, where unlike the European tradition of using models, the images were all made using mnemonic techniques, whereby the craftsmen were meant to memorize dhyana shlokas, which describe the attributes of various goddesses and gods, and they used the Talamana canon of measurement to essentially visualize the image and then sculpt it out of their own imagination rather than using models.
In the skilled hands of devoted artists, the metal images communicated the majesty and dignity of the deities, as well as the suppleness and dynamic movement of their bodily form. These are remarkably expressive and graceful. They convey the spiritual fervor of the artists who made them. These works of art are a part of a divine architecture, where the deity manifests himself in forms which awaken the bliss and the peace within the viewer. These fluid and subtle images are a means of expressing the beauty of the divine, which is in all that we see. In medieval Tamil Nadu, Hindus worshipped their deities in shrines within their homes and in temples. From the time of the devotional saints, from the 6th and 7th centuries onwards, many temples were built. The Chola period from the 9th century saw the increasing emphasis on grand temple structures. Many brick temples were rebuilt, and starting with the early 11th century, the tallest and most impressive temples were made. These edifices were like great cosmic palaces, inhabited by large numbers of deities. The Shaiva Agmas and the Vaishnava Samhitas, the sacred texts which guide the rituals in temples, prescribed the procession of Panchamurtis, or 5 images in the great temple festivals. With some 40,000 temples in Tamil Nadu, we can see how the art of making bronzes flourished here. Temples dedicated to Vishnu had a limited range of icons. Vishnu was represented with his consorts and in his avatars in human form as Krishna and Rama. The processional images of Shiva present him in many forms. We see him as a family man in the Soma Skanda icon with his beautiful wife Uma and child Skanda. As Bhikshatana, we see Shiva as the enchanting mendicant. As Veenadhara, we see Shiva as the lord of music. His lower hands would have held the veena, a stringed musical instrument. Many bronzes are also made of Shiva's wife Parvati and their sons Ganapati and Kartikeya. The sacred texts also mention Bhaktotsavas, the festivals of the devotees of the Lord. These celebrate the 63 saints of the Shiva tradition and the 12 saints of the Vishnu temples. On the day of the procession, the bronze image of the saint is taken in front of the deity and his compositions are recited before it. The most magnificent image in the bronzes is the Nataraja, Shiva in his cosmic dance. In this dance, he creates and destroys the world. The richness of symbolic meaning in the Nataraja image makes it one of the greatest icons created by man. The circle in which he dances is samsara, the cycle of life and death in this illusory world. In one hand he holds a drum, whose heartbeat sound represents the creation of the world. Complementing the moment of creation is the simultaneous destruction of the cosmos. In his other hand, he holds the fire with which he destroys the world. The lower right hand offers solace to the devotee, granting fearlessness with the Abhay Mudra. The lower left hand points to the raised foot. This foot springs up from the back of the dwarf of ignorance, of forgetfulness of the truth. The dwarf, Apasmara, is crushed under the right foot of Shiva. Under the raised foot, the devotee is promised refuge from the turmoil and confusion of the world of illusion. The dance is wild, as we see from the coils of Shiva's hair which fly in all directions. Yet, the expression of the Lord is serene, and the many limbs are in perfect balance. At the center of all the dynamic movement is the stillness of peace.
I think that notion of serenity or of stillness after agitation, the Shantarasa, is something that animates much Indian art. But it's to be cherished precisely because it's seen against a context of agitation and of non-repose. So, once again, the viewer or the worshipper is not invited to look at a desiccated, dry, abstract idea of serenity. It is actually a hard-won serenity that is placed in counterpoint to the invitations as well as the agitations of the material world. So it's this notion of counterpoint, the interplay of opposites, which for me truly defines the genius of Indic art.
In his hair, Shiva has Ganga, the heavenly river, as she passed through Shiva's locks on her descent to the earth. The Chola artists imaged deities as graceful, languid beings. There is always a sense of repose. Minute details, such as the gentle swelling of bellies, bring these bronzes alive before us. These bronzes also mark great technical achievement in the arts, where metal was flawlessly molded to give form to the intangible. The material never dominates the image, which moves the viewer through the perfection of its beauty. A balance is achieved in the dancing icons, where Sambandar balances on one foot, his arm extended in a posture that is dynamic and graceful. Nuances, such as a heel raised off the ground, show an effortless naturalism which goes far beyond photographic reality. We can relate immediately to the shyness of Parvati as a bride. Her companion gently places her hand on Parvati's back, encouraging her to move forward. The Kalyana Sundaramurti is undoubtedly one of the finest expressions of world art, where individual emotions are translated to a universal plane. As Shiva clasps Parvati's hand when they are married, the onlooker relates to the divine through emotions which are so closely a part of his own life. We are reminded of the divinity of life in all its moments. Thus, life in the world is fully celebrated. While the bronzes were made, Vedic hymns were chanted and sacred rites were performed at appropriate stages. They were elaborate rituals of establishment, similar to those of the main temple icon, whereby the divine presence was infused in the images. The Utsava Murtis would then reside in the sanctum or close to it. They would receive daily worship, and at the time of the festivals, they would truly come into their own. Besides daily and weekly festivals, most annual festivals last for 11 to 15 days. They are grand and colourful occasions in which the deities are carried through the city streets on palanquins and on vast chariots. The chariots or rathas have tall superstructures which resemble temple towers. Such festivals continue till today as expressions of religious fervour and personalized devotion to the deities. Tamil saints of the 6th to the 9th centuries brought a very special quality of Bhakti to religious practice in Tamil Nadu. Bhakti is a wholehearted devotion in which the worshipper becomes so immersed in the adoration of the Lord that he loses the sense of his separate self. It is a joyous path to the ultimate unity with the divine, out of love and its rapture.
It's a matter of mind, isn't it? There can be a very personal relationship with God. It's a personal relationship with something which is probably beyond our comprehension, but at the same time, the surrender is a accepted form of worship both in the Saivite tradition as well as the Vaishnava tradition. Finally, you are supposed to surrender.
Bhakti is the ultimate and most personalized expression of love of the deity. The poems of the saints left a deep impression upon Tamil culture, which continues till today. The Shiva saint Appar sings of Shiva. If you could see the arch of his brow, the budding smile on lips red as the kovai fruit, the sweet golden foot raised in dance, the essence of the Utsava Murtis is found in their poems. This is the Lord who has come out of his all-pervasive form in the inner sanctum to be among his people. On the streets he offers Darshan, a view of himself. In Indic traditions it is believed that the act of looking upon the divine is an act of receiving grace. The divine is present everywhere. In our recognition of that, we are blessed. The deity is treated as an honored guest and beloved Lord. He receives puja or ritual adoration every day, and in some temples, even up to 8 times a day. Priests wash his feet, bathe and anoint him, rub sandalwood paste on him, and dress and ornament him. He is entertained with song and dance, and hymns of the saints are sung before him. Inscriptions speak of a dazzling array of jewelry which was gifted to the deities. These were given by a wide range of persons, from royalty to merchants, musicians and dancers, and palace maids. Inscriptions also inform us of 400 dancing girls who were brought to live in Tanjavur to dance before the deities. The technique used to make South Indian bronzes is called the lost wax process. First, the image is carefully made out of hard beeswax, complete in all its details. Then the wax is covered with layers of clay. The clay-covered model is then heated so that all the wax melts and comes out. What is left is a cavity which exactly replicates the wax image. Next, the molten bronze is poured in through channels in the original design. Once it has cooled, the clay is broken away and the stems of the channel are filed off. During Chola times, the molds were made so perfectly that no further details needed to be carved. However, these days, the fine details are cut after the casting process is over. As the clay mold is lost each time, every bronze is a unique work of art. The early images were made of copper, as is recorded in Chola inscriptions. In later times, images of Panchaloha, or 5 metals, became popular. The constituents, gold, silver, copper, lead and tin, represent the 5 basic elements of which the world is made.
The Sthapati who makes the bronze image, he creates an image with all devotion, and it is seen that he is considered the Acharya at that time. So, he is called Achari. He is given cloth, he is given garland, he is given all the gifts. In fact, he is even worshipped. Sacred water is sprinkled on him, and he becomes the divine who makes the divine image.
The passion and the devotion of the Tamil saints and other devotees are well expressed in the words of the saint Sundarar. We see also the deeply personal quality of this worship. Great Lord of mercy, you have placed yourself in my heart, and now nothing will let me forget you. How could I possibly say that I am not your slave? It is these exquisite images in human form which brought the divine from abstraction to accessibility and even intimacy. The Saint Appar sings, "It is glorious and unceasing, the singing and dancing about the Lord's glory, as devotees sing the praises of the Lord who stood revealed before them." The Utsava Murtis and festivals provide that wonderful occasion when the people may experience the joy of being overwhelmed with devotional feeling.